Hello, this is a July 2nd, 2017 weather briefing for Atmospheric Science 231, Aviation Meteorology, and this is by Colton Nelson. Here we see the current METAR stations, mostly VFR conditions for those stations that are plotted. When we zoom in here to North Dakota, a few more stations will pop up. We see that for most of the state we're in the 70s up to 80 here for Williston. And then for significant weather, we see Dickinson has lightning visible and 9 statute miles visibility, and thunderstorm in the vicinity, light rain broken at 7,500, overcast at 10,000, but a peak wind is reported 1320 at gusting to 28. For Grand Forks, we see winds are from 040 at 6 knots. The visibility is 10 statute miles. Few clouds at 4,000. Another layer, a few clouds at 20,000 feet. And there's a temperature in Celsius, so 69 degrees Fahrenheit. Here's another graph representing METAR stations for our region, and it pretty much shows the same thing. And there's that storm over by Dickinson. And then down in Nebraska, see another bit of thunderstorm activity, and also looks like some precipitation throughout this area. So overall we see pretty good flying conditions and pretty warm weather in the 70s and 80s. Here's the most current visible satellite imagery. You can see in North Dakota that over the western half of the state it's more cloudy, where that thunderstorm activity is occurring, and then for our half of the state it's pretty clear. Here's the most current radar for the past couple hours, and again not showing very much activity on the base reflectivity. And here's the surface analysis chart for North America, issued at 2226 Zulu and showing 21 Zulu. So we see that there's quite a few stationary fronts. One here coming all the way down from Canada and wrapping around to a cold front that goes up to the Great Lake region around this low pressure system here. And then we have another stationary front turning into a cold front, into an occluded front up into northeastern Canada. We see quite a few low and high pressure systems throughout the United States, and a high pressure system sitting in the Gulf. There's also a outflow boundary over northern Texas, which could show some thunderstorm activity in that region as well. Here's some more GOES visible satellite imagery. I'm just going to play a loop here. Shows some clouds forming in eastern Montana and going into North Dakota here, not quite reaching us in Grand Forks, however. This is just another image of visible satellite, which gives a better idea of cloud coverage over this area. You can see quite a bit of clouds over parts of Wyoming, Colorado, Nebraska, South Dakota, and coming up into North Dakota. There's also a patch of clouds over here by Oklahoma. Here's infrared satellite showing those same clouds, but here's a temperature scale indicator, so it's on the pretty cold side here, and you can see there's also some activity along the east coast off the Atlantic there, and then parts of western Mexico. Here's our water vapor for the United States, and it lines up pretty well with the past slides. Looks like, again, this area of coming off of Montana and down into Wyoming, Nebraska, South Dakota, parts of North Dakota, and down here into Oklahoma, and then up along the coast and parts of western Mexico. Here are the most current air reps and PI reps. As you can see in our area, there are currently no PI reps or air reps. Closest one here shows moderate turbulence, and it lasted 3 minutes, and it's from a Boeing 739, I believe. Here are our SIGMETs, and we see quite a bit of convective activity, which lined up pretty well with our visible satellite imagery and other infrared satellite, water vapor satellite imagery. And we can see those thunderstorm activity here and convective activity along these states, along Oklahoma, and then up through the coast here, through Georgia and North Carolina. Here's a convective outlook. It was updated Monday, July 3rd at 55 Zulu. And we could see there's some slight to marginal conditions, and this will be valid until July 3rd at 12 Zulu. Here are the lowest freezing levels. You can see that the freezing levels are pretty high. Here we see most of the United States is in the red, so 15,000 feet to 17,000 feet MSL. And then only over here off the coast of California do we see surface to 1,000 feet. Here we see the 925 millibar height chart, which also includes humidity. You can see that it goes to 70 to 90%. And when we go to our 700 millibar chart, a lot of that humidity falls off, and the winds are not very significant across the United States. Here they're picking up around 30 knots. And when we go to our 200 millibar chart, we could start to see the jet stream and the winds pick up considerably. Here we see 100 knots, 80 knots, 70 knots, and so forth. Now for the forecast conditions, here's the low-level prog chart. We see some MVFR conditions here along eastern Texas up into big part of Oklahoma, and then off of western California and up northwest into Washington, and then off the Atlantic. And then for 18 Zulu, we see some of that MVFR conditions dropping off, and the freezing levels at 16,000 feet going throughout Texas up through the Four Corner States, Nevada, into Oregon. Here's a high-level prog chart. We can see the jet stream at flight level 330. Winds are at 90 knots. Not a lot of activity around us, except this isolated embedded thunderstorm, cumulonimbus at 33,000 for the tops. And we could see some more thunderstorm activity isolated, embedded throughout Mexico and off the eastern seaboard. Here's more convective outlook, valid from the 3rd at 12 Zulu to the 4th at 12 Zulu. Doesn't change much from our previous convective outlook. And then going out further, again, not much change, except marginal conditions have shifted a bit, and they're going up through our area. Here's our area forecast, which was issued the 3rd at 1:45 Zulu, and is valid. The clouds and weather are valid until the 3rd at 14 Zulu. And here we see eastern North Dakota, skies clear. Then at 8 Zulu, skies become broken at 12,000, the tops, flight level 240, outlook is VFR. Here's the TAF for Grand Forks, which was released the 2nd at 2336 Zulu. It goes through the 3rd at 19 Zulu. We see that not much is happening. The winds are varying a bit. They go from 130 to 170, 5 knots to 8 knots, but the visibility remains greater than 6 statute miles, and we mostly see broken and scattered clouds from 12,000 feet, broken to scattered at 12,000 feet. Here's the winds aloft forecast, which is valid at the 3rd on 12 Zulu for use between 9 Zulu and 18 Zulu. Here we see Grand Forks, and at the 3,000 we see winds at 161, and then it's pretty calm, and then going up to 9,000 we see our temperatures at +8, winds from 310 at 11, and then going up to 39,000 we see winds from 330 at 41 knots at minus 55 degrees Celsius. And lastly, we have our graphical forecast for aviation. Here's our ceiling and visibility for North Dakota, and I'm going to extend it out here, and you can see that there's slight or moderate thunderstorms with rain that do extend over the western portion of North Dakota, but it does not reach our area if I keep extending it out. And that is it for this weather briefing.